Well, her question is, okay, we win. What happens, right? So they audit the Fed. I think the first thing that you're going to find out is there's no gold. I mean, they don't have it anymore. We had 18 billion back in Nixon. I doubt there's probably a bar in Fort Knox. we're going to find out exactly who their buddies are and where the money went. I mean, if you look at TARP actually went to banks who had loaned out too much money. It went to the banks to make them solvent for the homes that they loaned. And they were solvent again, but what about the people? So not only did they get paid for the mortgage that was bad, but they took the asset from the person too. I mean, that's inherently evil.
Right.
So that's the thing about it, is this is big, icky, evil stuff. I mean, it's old-fashioned, yuck. I think that what you're looking at is a transition. You're going to have to transition to what this country was about much longer than it was about this system, the progressive era, and actually what it was prior to 1913. So you're going to have to do that transition back over to a commodity-based money, to a free market-based money. What you're finding is this is a fear-based government. And I start getting into outer space with this, but people feel like they need to control everything. You cannot control the economy. It's not possible. And if you're living in a place of fear, then you bring all this control in, and just more things slip through your fingers, and that's where the society's job is introducing the idea of faith. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Well, there's two ways to go with that. One, the currency collapses, and we're forced to do it. Secondly, we address it like adults, like men and women, and we do it voluntarily. I don't know if they're going to do it voluntarily. I don't know. But if you look at the whole picture, it's so overwhelming. It's so disconcerting. It scares me to death. It scares me for my father probably more than for my daughter, because he's retiring. And the way that I've learned to do it is myself. Know the truth myself. And again, we're here as South Carolina people, and we have an interesting race to deal with here, but that's not what this is about. We need to educate ourselves, and that's what I've done. I just need to understand it. And for my family, then I put my money where my mouth is. If I think commodity-based money is the way to go, then I'm going to go get some cougar rings. I'm going to make sure that my family is taken care of. And I tell my friends that this is a reality. If you look at the economic index now, if you look at all the numbers, we're looking at a double dip. That is a realistic thing. It's coming. And I wouldn't want to be president in 2012 if they keep this up. Because it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, it's coming. Well, I think it comes back to what we're saying. I mean, you have to, I was kind of woefully boring, I know. But I'm trying to give you a historical perspective. You, personally, what's happened is this comes down to individual responsibility. There is no way that we're going to be able to get someone who is fully ingrained and indoctrinated by propaganda to see what we're saying. We have to protect ourselves. And, it's a lot of my faith, too. You light your own candle, and then you're a light of the world. So you really have to own this information. You have to believe it. What's an important process, too, is kind of get above the fray. I mean, think about me. I'm military. I'm a Southerner. Whoa, crazy Southerner. Very conservative man, very strong faith. Where would I lie? But I understand that this argument is actually independent of political affiliation, that we have to get one notch up and understand as Americans what's going on. And if you educate yourself and you understand clearly, because I have been around state economists. Wow, I mean, the stuff they say is just, what are you talking about? If you own the truth, then people will ask you questions and go, how are you so calm? And that's how you start sending the message. You walk the walk. And I know that sounds simple, but it's, for me, the most success in my life is understanding that the only thing that I can control is myself. I get up in the mirror and I look in the mirror and say, you're the problem. And when I address myself, then I have an opportunity to send out a good message. But not before, when I'm worried about, you need to think this, you need to, that's what they do. So that's not our job. Yeah, well, I mean, again, George Washington said the government was dangerous. And it's in the interest of the state to gain in money and power.
So the state.
So the government in itself really doesn't have any vested interest in making changes. We have very few statesmen left, true statesmen. And for me, one of my personal beliefs is Ron Paul is a true statesman. He's been saying the same thing for 30 years. And everything that he says is right.
So the state said, but then I guess it's like Arizona, then the government can turn around and sue the state, right? So you could go on in battles with litigation forever and ever, and then we go right down the river, right?
Well, when you look at what I'm trying to do and why you see me doing what I'm doing, I'm not trying to create any controversy. I'm not trying to make anybody upset. I love my state and I love the South. But the reason I do this is because I know you send one more guy up there. Ron Paul got an audit of the Federal Reserve all the way to the Senate by himself. Put a second guy. You know, we're going to caucus with the Liberty Caucus, which is a subgroup of the Republican Conference. And he is actually the chairman of the Liberty Caucus. And we're going to continue to support that legislation. And the nice part about what we are talking about, it's relatively boring to most folks. They don't pay attention. I'm not going to get in there and put my opinion about this or that. I'm going to stay right on point because I know that this is a solution and I can run under the radar. You know, what was very interesting is why all this stuff was going, whatever the news has us upset about for the month, you know, they just change every month. Right during the middle of one of them, Ron Paul was in the the subcommittee on monetary policy. And he was sitting there by himself with some staff. There was one person in the audience, or in the chamber, and he was a representative of the Federal Reserve. And they were talking back and forth how the Federal Reserve was going to create $60 billion to give to Europe. Do any of you know about it?
No.
So this is the real battle. This is the thing. And what we're running into is you've got these candidates out there, and again, it's not about personality. They're fine men. And I really like Parker, yes, I liked him. And I still do, and he's not dead.
Yeah. So is that the 60 billion you talked about with Greece?
That's right.
Yeah,
so we're involved in the whole thing. And the whole system is all tied together.
Yeah.
But what you hear, these guys, they're coming up here and they're saying, you go to Tea Party events, and they're so upset, they're so frightened, and they'll say, I'm for small government. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? How are you going to accomplish that? I'm going to get back to the Constitution. Without addressing the centralized banking, without addressing their ability to counterfeit, then you're not going to get back to anything. If you want your political party back, you turn off the printing press. That's the only way it's going to happen. And I want to hear these guys. I'll sit with them, and I'll say, okay, tell me, what's your small, how are you going to do it? Nothing. Just, there's nothing there. So again, it comes back to you, the responsibility of you understanding the issue, understanding what these men are saying, because it is that important. If you want to get a good look of what's going to happen if we do not change it, where was the last place that the Soviet Union was when they were expanding? Come on, somebody.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. So you want to get a good idea of where our economic picture is going? That's it. So they have, Rome did the same thing, empires do this. It's not as unpredictable as you think because there's a good deal of historical precedent. Look at history. History is the best teacher. And then when people hit you with, what about, you know the facts. Know the facts. Any other questions?